Thank you everybody for joining our first Dvsa webinar as part of Leeds Digital Festival, round 2. Today's session is Successful Digital Transformation within Government, hosted by Paul Bailey, our digital consultant for Spark. We are recording today's session and we do want it to be as interactive as possible, so please do ask any questions that you've got through the Q&A functionality and we will get through them at the end. Anything that we don't get a chance to go through today, we will be doing a follow-up, so don't worry, everything will get answered. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Paul for today's session.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to start by saying, Karen, great job. This is a brilliant event and I can't believe that you've agreed to do it twice in 1 year. But there's a brilliant lineup of people over the next week or so. And I know that a lot of effort has gone to making this happen. So thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Paul Bailey and today I'm going to talk about successful digital transformation within government. And the subtitle for this is Designing for Blind Dinosaurs with Sausage Fingers. And hopefully as we go along, the reason for that will become clear. So I'm a digital consultant with a company called Spark. We're design and innovation consultancy for BGSS, which is the largest independent IT consultancy in the UK. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is to share a journey that I've been on over the last couple of years, working as part of a multidisciplinary team to deliver a new improved UK digital driving test experience for the Dvsa. I'm going to talk a little bit about how human-centered design was used to add oomph throughout the actual delivery process and share some practical tips which you'll be able to take away and hopefully apply in your own practice. But first, more importantly, before all that, I need to introduce you to Olivier. Olivier, you made it. You're here.
Yay. Yeah, everyone.
So we worked together for the last, was it about 2 years on this?
Pretty much, yeah, almost yeah, two and a half years, but on the project the last 12 months up to April.
Yeah, so we shared the project highs and lows, and Leo's going to be chipping in with his experiences and hopefully answering all the tricky questions. Which if you have got any of those, feel free to submit them in the Q&A, and Olivier's going to try and pick some up as we go along, and we'll answer some as we actually go through the talk. So hi
to Yvette, who already left a message in the Q&A.
Hey, Yvette's here.
And yeah, feel free to just make this interactive and leave some questions or comments as we go along.
Yeah, great, thank you very much. So let's crack on then. So this may be a place that is familiar to some, and in many ways this is, for me anyway, where my journey started. And this is a waiting room where you might sit before taking the driving test. And back in April, I think I wrote this down somewhere, April the 7th, 1992, was when I took my driving test, and I sat in a room very similar to this. And your driving test, it's one of those experiences that I'm sure most of you will, if you've done one, will recall really vividly. And the only way that I can kind of personally liken to this, the time that you're in this space here, it's a bit like sitting in the dentist waiting room, knowing that you might need a filling. There are over 370 of these waiting rooms across the UK. And over the last 2 years, both myself and Olivia have had the opportunity to watch all the emotional dramas kind of unfold there. Every day, these places are stages for people's emotions, and we've saw some real examples of disappointment and tragedy when people are unsuccessful. But also, they're also a place of triumph and celebration, and particularly when a candidate's received those joyous 6 words, "I'm pleased to say you've passed." This guy is a friend of mine called Jordan, and he wanted to pass. He had a new job, he needed to commute. And for him, passing his driving test was life-changing. And I think actually it is for most of us. You know, it helps us to find freedom, and it almost can be a step in the process of becoming an adult, I guess, in a way. So the Dvsa, they are the Department for Transport's executive agency responsible for ensuring drivers and vehicles may legally use the UK road networks. And they've got this 5-year strategy, and it's all about them being on a journey to transform into a digitally enabled organisation. They want to adopt human-centred design and agile ways of working to deliver better products, services, and user experiences. And every year they conduct over 1.8 million practical driving tests in the UK, which was really a surprise to me. It seems like quite a lot. But then when the pass rate, I think, is about 46%, you can kind of start to understand why that might be. But this process anyway, this driving test process, the practical, is completely paper-based. And it had not really changed since I took my test back in '92. And it'd been identified as inefficient, outdated, and in desperate need of modernisation. So you're probably thinking, this talks about successful digital transformation in government, right? But what does that look like? Okay, so we've made a short video, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this will work. Best case scenario, you'll get a 90-second overview of the entire project. Worst case scenario, we'll have to try something else. So here goes, fingers crossed.
Dvsa is a road safety organisation. Our strategy is about keeping people safe on Britain's roads. We want that service to be modern, and this is a journey that we've started now with test result capture using iPads.
When I became a driving examiner, I couldn't believe how much paper we used and how much paper we wasted.
All that paper needs to be stored in the driving test centre for 2 years as well. There's a high error rate where we can make easy mistakes. We also had a lot of repetitive writing, a lot of postage. It didn't really work. It was an old system that we made work. We've been working with driving examiners from the start.
We had an early adopter network around the country, so every area, every test centre had a contribution to make.
We had twice monthly conference calls where we discussed any feedback that we had.
It got everybody on board because our feedback was taken into account as well, which was nice.
What really mattered is the 1,600 driving examiners out there were given the opportunity to see it, play with it, and give us their opinion. They're the people that really mattered on this project.
We've provided a lot of training to the examiners. We've got examiners who are, in their own words, are blind dinosaurs with sausage fingers. So we need to develop an app that they can feel confident in using.
We brought the iPads out before the digitisation had taken place, and so people got some degree of familiarity.
By doing things like that, we turned the ship around from, I don't want to change from paper, as to, when can I have it? I want it now.
The first test that we used the app was a little bit nervous, to be honest.
All my colleagues were very jealous that they were still writing things out and I was not.
I would definitely not want to go back to paper. In the mornings, I can just sit down and have a cup of tea until I go out on my first test.
This is a fantastic legacy project that's taken away 20 years of old ways of working and brought us into the 21st century.
To be involved in the project and be now using them is a brilliant thing. I'm glad to have been a part of it.
Okay, so that's all the razzmatazz, but what about the actual project outcomes? Well, the main thing, I guess, for us, and we focused right from the start, was to try and make driving examiners' lives easier. And by digitising the process, we were saving them at least 15 minutes every day, which was time that they would have spent copying data that they'd been faxed to their test centre and manually writing out all the different paper forms that they needed to complete tests in that day. And I guess for me, one of the greatest project outcomes was around 60% of driving examiners aged over 50, and approximately 1 in 6 of them class themselves as learning the ropes on the government digital inclusion scale. And yet 100% of driving examiners adopted the digital service. And it's worth bearing in mind that some of these driving examiners have been using the paper-based process for decades. We had an estimated cost savings of around £500,000 annually by removing the need for printing, posting and processing paper-based test results. And we created a more accessible service as well, particularly for people with additional and assisted digital needs. There's a whole other bunch of stuff that we could go on about, but I guess the next question you're asking is, well, that all seems great, but what did you actually do? How did you actually get there? So to understand that, let's take a little look at the UK Government Guide to Digital Transformation. If you've not come across this before, I highly recommend that you take a closer look. In this diagram, you can see the various stages of service development from discovery there on the left to project retirement on the right. And each phase is focused on a different outcome. But the overall idea is, as the project develops, you reduce risk and uncertainty. But in reality, the many teams working in digital transformation projects, the journey is something a little bit more like this. So this is a kind of reflection of the journey I took on the driving examiner services. And our objective was kind of starting out on the left with Alpha. Our objective was to understand the potential users and their needs, and test different design ideas and prototypes with likely users, and learn how to build or improve our service so that help users achieve their goals. And I joined right at the beginning at Alpha. We had 14 weeks to get all this stuff done and make enough progress to prove that actually it was worthwhile taking forward into a beta phase. And over that 14 weeks, we did a lot. We interviewed over 100 people. We visited 25 test centres across different parts of the country. We identified over 40 pain points with the current user journey. We designed, tested and delivered 8 prototypes. And it was really hard work. Throughout the 14 weeks, it really felt like we're only one step ahead of the development team who were constantly on our tail. So there's me. Yay! After that 14 weeks though, we did manage to pass our GDS assessment with flying colours. And just as we were getting into our kind of groove, if you like, the alpha phase was completed. And the project went on hold for about 5 months and the team was disbanded. All of that knowledge and experience was dispersed, and it was just one of those things. We needed to agree finance, contracts needed to be signed, and there was not really anything we can do about it. But I guess for me, it did give me some time to reflect. I knew we'd done a really good job on Alpha, but I couldn't help but feel that we could do things that added more impact. So I started to learn a little bit about what other people had done. And over the next a few months passed, and then I got a call from the delivery manager to say that we were going to kick off beta and I was going to be on the project team. So I was really excited. I knew this was going to be a whole different kind of ball game. Suddenly we weren't talking about 7 sprints, we were talking about 37 sprints or 74 weeks. This was going to be a kind of require a certain amount of stamina and resilience, I think, to get through a project of that long, that kind of length. But luckily, we had a really great, we've still got a really great delivery manager called Lee White, who now heads up delivery in our Nottingham office. And he was willing to kind of experiment and trust me and Ollie, I guess, to a certain extent, to try a few different approaches. And we did a couple of things, I think, before the project started that really made a big difference to the onboarding of the new team. And I started to think of them as the projects before the project. And these projects kind of came in 2 parts. Firstly, we had Alpha Plus, and this was a very small team, which included a delivery manager, lead user researcher, BA, and a dev that were brought together before the start of the project. And what this meant was we were able to address the feedback from our Alpha GDS assessment. We were able to plan user research activities for the first few sprints. We could get the backlog into a good shape for when the team landed, and we could start sorting technical issues like hardware, software, tools to get everybody up and running really quickly. The other thing that we did, it's not allowed to be called Sprint 0, it was called Inception Week. So we knew that having a big team all starting at the same time, we wanted to make sure that they could start delivering value as quickly as possible. So I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but first I want to take a quick look at the makeup of the team. So this is our equivalent of a school photo. This team was co-located. We had people traveling from across the UK, from Wales, from Ireland, from Poland. And we aim to be on site in our Nottingham office on Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays. But right from the start, we were working in a remote way. And this was kind of pre-COVID. So this was from, let me think now, when did we kick off, Ollie? It was like 2018.
October 2018.
October 2018. So right from the start, we were using tools like Skype, Slack, Zoom, Miro, Trello, Confluence and Jira to keep in touch and work in a distributed
worth noting
way.
as well is the many people who were on the project are not actually on that photo as well. They left or new people came. So it was actually much more people involved.
Yeah, this hasn't got everybody on. I think we got most people, but yeah, there's definitely, as the project evolved, definitely people came and people went, depending on the needs. So we were what I've heard called recently a rainbow team, which I thought was quite a nice phrase. But essentially, this was quite unusual for me, I guess, because what the DVSA's approach was to take a multi-agency approach. So this team was made up from people from the DVSA, from BGSS, from Spark, and from another agency called Kpis right from the start. And initially, I was kind of concerned about how that might go and potential kind of inter-agency issues. But in many ways, the team really benefited from this kind of wider knowledge base.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it really meant that we had some really great discussions about, what does it mean to be a business analyst, or how should we conduct user research? And I think the DVSA actually benefited quite a lot from this kind of multi-agency.
Yeah, I think
approach.
it kind of organically formed a pool of resource that people could tap into. So, for example, I worked closely with my counterpart, Nad, with the UX designer at Kpis, and we were access to different networks. So within Spark and within Kpis design community, that was brilliant. You could really have this dialogue and getting different points of view across. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, it worked really well, didn't it? So the team structure, as you can see from this, the development teams were split into two small multidisciplinary teams called the Appy Tappers and the Journalist, each with a kind of similar structure and skill set. And each we had a user researcher, UX designer, BA, platform engineer, quality assurance, technical lead, and some developers. And they were supported by a range of specialists, including service owners, product owners, service designers, and content designers. And what that meant was, in many ways, we had this, well, I kind of think if this is like a juicy layer of design that goes throughout and across the project. And it meant that design kind of had a voice at all the different tables where all the different discussions were happening. And it meant that those people helped the whole team focus on the kind of basic principles of human-centered design around understanding and addressing core problems, about being people-centered, using an activity-centered approach, and making sure that we were rapidly iterating whilst all the time focusing on user needs.
I think it was also about having the team autonomous and being able to deliver independently. So because each function were embedded into each team, that means that each team was actually accountable for what they were delivering each sprint. And then obviously there was some dependency between teams, but they could be solved regularly and discussed in a way that was, no confrontational. It was just, we've got a dependency there. Yeah, we've got a dependency. Okay, and sort it out. So the way the two teams were structured was really, it worked really well.
Yeah, it did. So the first question that we had then coming back was, how might we get these people on board quickly and effectively? I knew from my Alpha experience that stakeholders would be keen to get the devs developing. But at the same time, we had a complete new team that had mountains of previous research, and we would need to try and get to grips with the project requirements. I wanted to make sure right from the start that we focused on user needs. So we did a number of things, I guess, to turn Inception Week into an Inception experience. So on the Monday, I think you can just see you there in the background, Ollie.
Yeah. Xavier's watching his phone.
Yeah, everyone's engaged. So we created a driving test center in the office. We wanted to recreate and act out the end-to-end experience. We wanted the whole team to understand the end-to-end journey, which included multiple environmental settings, both inside and outside. We also wanted them to understand some of the ergonomic challenges of using an iPad to record outcomes in a moving vehicle. But perhaps more important than both of those things is we wanted them to start to feel empathy and to understand what it was, what it felt like to be a passenger, but also what it felt like to be a driver as well, taking part in this experience. The second day, we did a Lego City activity, and if you've not done this before, I highly recommend it. I've left a little URL link there in the corner, legoforscrum.com. And this enabled us to all experience firsthand agile thinking and to see the Scrum framework in action. And this was particularly useful for product owners and service owners that perhaps were new to digital and had not perhaps seen this working in action previously. On Wednesday, we focused in on GDS standards and principles. We knew we'd have to pass a GDS assessment to get through to the next stage. So we held a workshop to review the GDS standards to ensure one thing really, that we started with user needs, and secondly, to make sure that we identified any areas that the team felt they needed to be addressed early on in the project, and that meant we could focus on these in our future user research plans or activities that we were doing in the upcoming months. Thursday, we collaboratively designed our KPIs and metrics. We knew we need to make sure everybody had an agreed version of what success looked like, and more importantly, how we'd measure it. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we got everybody into the passenger sheet and then shared our stories. We arranged for the entire team to go out and visit a driving test centre across the UK. And we enabled every single person to speak to a driving examiner to better understand their needs, and then sit in on a live driving test to see the end-to-end journey as is for themselves. And in many ways, I think the thing that had the most impact out of that first week was when we all came back to the office and played back our stories to each other. We heard of a candidate who'd failed for the 6th time and nearly reversed into a bollard in the car park. And we heard of the delight of a young mum who passed the test and she could now commute to a new job. And those stories really stuck with people. And it really got a lot of buy-in in terms of getting behind this whole idea of let's see what we can do to make driving examiners' lives easier.
I think it touched also on an interesting point when we say in Agile, we're not really keen on documentation, because having this understanding of the context and experience, and having seen a test center, having sat on a driving test, was really, really useful to onboard new people coming on the project as well, because we knew what to talk about, and we knew that we could just fill the gaps after having them experiencing something. So it was so useful to just have this conversation and ensuring that everybody is aligning to what we're trying to do. So definitely recommend that, going directly to the context and the user, and being there and experiencing it. It was a brilliant experience, really brilliant. And I was surprised that we got the product owners to agree to do it. Well, luckily we all survived.
yeah, luckily. So by the end of that first week then, we had a team full of empathy and compassion and completely focused on user needs. We had agreed ways of working and principles to guide us in everything I do in GDS. And we had a really clear vision about what was needed to be delivered and how we were going to measure success. But I guess one of the things that happens in my experience anyway is when teams knuckle down and get focused on delivery, it's easy for the conversation to become all about story points and velocity, because that's ultimately how many stakeholders measure progress. And when your project is 74 weeks long, how do you keep the focus on what really adds value? And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we avoid is what I call the meh zone, where the initial excitement of the project kickoff and the launch kind of fades away, and it becomes kind of a business as usual thing, and it feels a bit like you're just on the hamster wheel of development. So one of the questions that we were kind of asked ourselves at this stage was how do we make sure that we can avoid that meh zone feeling whilst maintaining constant momentum? So let's talk about some of the things that we actually did then to ensure that teams maintain their focus. So to understand this, I want to talk a little bit about dual-track delivery. So in this diagram, you can see two streams of activity that's focused on getting stuff done. Top track is all about discovery. It's focused on creating the right design at the team's product or feature level. It's about testing and designing the thing so the thing is ready to be built. Then below we've got the delivery track, which is usually where the larger resource costs are. It's often focused on story points, velocity, and essentially ensuring that thing that's been designed is tested and built right. Now this approach is effective in delivering features and products, but it can miss out on the insights that a human-centered design approach can bring, which really is essential to make sure that you're actually building the right thing, not only just building the thing right. So in this diagram, you can see the way that we worked. We had kind of a third track, and it was all around understanding. And this idea in many ways comes from a guy called Dave Mulaf, and I've included a link here if you want to find out a little bit more about his thinking around this. But he recognized the need for a track at the beginning of the process as a focus on user needs and understanding in a broader context. And this third independent parallel track, it meant that we could do more foundational research and make sure we could understand the broader context and the environments in which our application was going to be used and how it was going to be used. And in many ways, it helps to ensure the team not only build things right, but that they build the right things and that the whole team stayed laser focused on user needs. And in many ways, this track is about reducing risk. With more upfront effort in understanding, we have less effort later on in rework, which is great for everybody.
I think there was something also, I picked something in the video that was about training and, you know, the road to readiness. And I think having this track really allowed for us to think about this issue, you know, like how do we make sure that even if we know that we're designing the right thing, how do we train people, or how do we enable that training to take place in Dvsa? And that was partly because this kind of holistic research was created and, you know, engaging with driving examiner and understanding their context. So I think it was quite important to see that we are not just delivering stuff, but we're also enabling the change and people to use these new tools.
So what did we do on this understanding track then? Well, firstly, and perhaps most importantly, we designed for driving examiners with driving examiners. We visited 50+ driving test centres across the UK. We listened to the concerns, we shared our progress, we did interviews, usability testing, and most importantly, we conducted co-creation workshops. So this picture is from a workshop that we did, I think it was at 8:10 on a Tuesday morning in Manchester Driving Test Centre before everybody went out on their first tests. And we purposely went in with giant post-it notes, scissors, sellotape, and kind of helped the vehicle examiners get a little bit out of their comfort zone, but at the same time, use these artifacts that they created to be able to articulate what it is that they actually needed. And you can see this example here, a driving examiner's cut out an existing paper form to tell us how he'd like it to be designed going forward in a way that would make it easier for him to be able to do his job. We took a multidisciplinary approach to problem solving. The whole team had a voice. We had an open forum, which was based on trust and mutual respect. And we also held fortnightly show and tells to share our work. And this was at our Nottingham office, but also at the Dvsa headquarters in the Axis building in Nottingham as well. And we alternated them between the two offices. And often we had 60+ people attend from the Dvsa from across the agency.
Process. So this diagram kind of summarized the process we took in design. But basically, the main thing that drove our process was making sure that we were learning fast and then being able to iterate based on what these learnings were. So at every stage, basically, we were wondering what can we do to learn better about our design. So it might be just having a whiteboarding session with business analyst, or having a screen review with policyholder, or testing with user on the site. And the idea was really to build our understanding and to build the design before it even start to be developed. So working in very quick iteration cycle, and just making sure that when we hand over to the developer, we have a common understanding of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think some of the things that were really key to that was the involvement of our product owner and service owner, because they were really here at every single stage. Even a scrappy drawing like you can see here on our design wall, what we wanted to do is really make sure that we keep that visibility of the design throughout, even an idea that's just a draft, and we would put it on that wall, and very soon that wall actually became like a campfire where people would just come and have this conversation, just checking something, just checking an element, seeing where is the design at, or actually engaging into some technical discussion as well. And again, that was a way for us to just facilitate this conversation in a non-digital way and a more ad hoc basis.
Yeah, that was a really important part of the project, wasn't it? I think that.
And also because new people joining in and just being able to direct them to the wall and giving them this overview.
Yeah, and essentially what that enabled to do is within 2 months into the project, we used what we'd learned and we built and released a familiarization app, which included a practice mode for vehicle examiners. And we knew this wasn't perfect. There was loads of room for improvement, but we wanted to give every driving examiner an opportunity to provide feedback on early versions rather than just having something land on them at the last minute. So they all got to see what the app might look like. They all got a practice mode, and they all were able to give us feedback and take part in the early iteration process. And this was a really valuable way to collect a lot of vital feedback really early on in the project, and helped us to identify the key things that we needed to do in future iterations. This is probably one of my favorite bits of the project. We recruited a tribe of what we called early adopters from across the UK. These were driving examiners that were purposely chosen for mixed levels of digital confidence. And we held a big workshop, onboarding workshop in Nottingham, where we brought them up to speed with the project. We helped them to understand how they could help us. And we actually involved them in the process of designing the app. And we asked for their feedback. We got to visit their test centres, and they in turn supported us by taking early prototypes out to test centres and gathering feedback on our behalf, and also supporting other vehicle examiners that were getting to grips with perhaps using an iPad for the first time.
Mm-hmm. One of the way we've utilized this network was to actually, because we were using InVision, and we were able to organize bi-weekly call and share a prototype with them through a link, and then have them to actually almost comment in real time and get some feedback from, you can see here there's about 20 people on that call. And then within a week, we would actually have feedback from their colleagues as well, fed back to us. So in essence, what it did is that it cut down the feedback loop to, you know, a couple days, maybe a week. So it means within the 2 weeks, 2 week sprint period, we were actually able to progress extremely fast with our design. So that was really brilliant for that.
So the other thing that we did is we kept it human. So at the start of the actual project, we were looking a lot more qualitative. So we were looking for stories that everybody could relate to and that would help guide our decision making. And this quote was from a driving examiner, and it guided a lot of decisions around the interactions and how the app should work. And we continually asked ourselves this question: would this work for somebody, for a blind dinosaur with sausage fingers?
Just to say that this is in their own words.
Yeah.
It's not us making it.
But as the project progressed, we proved it with data. So we had these assumptions and hypotheses, but we made sure that we relied more on quantitative data to check that these were correct. And we created a data dashboard, which meant that we could track live information and use that to inform future design decisions. And we made sure that we tackled the biggest challenges first. So one of the big challenges was how to make sure that we were developing something that was still going to be safe to use. And we did a number of significant user research studies and conducted over 100 in-car usability tests to evaluate driving examiners' ability to log test results without actually taking their eyes off the road. And the video that we took, I think we had about 15 hours worth of video to analyse, really helped us to create something that driving examiners were using in almost exactly the same way as the way that they used to do it on paper previously. And we made sure that it worked for everybody. So we had users with additional needs and those on the assisted digital scale. And we really wanted to make sure that it worked for them too. So we had an independent accessibility audit, and we wrote an accessibility statement in line with GDS guidelines to show that what we'd done and how we'd done it and how we can improve going forward. And we travelled a lot. We went to every event that we could go to that was from Dvsa or from the trade. We asked for feedback, we listened to concerns, and we answered lots and lots of questions, but we did a lot of listening. We really listened a lot. And all of these things helped us to stay laser focused on user needs, whilst actually giving the team a sense of progress and a sense of purpose. When we came back with the stories of how things worked or didn't work, it meant that the team weren't just completing story points and delivering code. They felt like they were really delivering value by solving real problems for real people and helping to make the whole process just a little bit easier. And it meant that we had a happy delivery manager. So,
donut. Is that our donut consumption curve?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, so I'm told this is a happy chart. I'm not an expert on these things, but anyway, generally our delivery manager was very happy, and so was our service and product owners. So we completed the UK's first live digital driving test on October the 3rd, 2019. Our product owners, Graham and Steve, did it, and it went without a hitch. And quite quickly, a small cohort of driving examiners was ramped up. By the end of February, we'd completed over 500,000 tests. We'd also passed our GDS assessment, and we really got a really great assessment, and we kind of passed it with flying colours, which we were really pleased about, because anybody that's been through that will know that it's quite a kind of hurdle to try and get over, particularly if you've not done one before, or as in Olivier's case, he only had 15 minutes to present his bit, which he did an amazing job of. But the team's journey at that point was kind of coming to an end. You know, at the end of that beta phase, we're only commissioned to do that piece of work, and then that's it. That project will be finished. So this kind of brings me to the final question. How might we help shift culture and create a lasting change? How do we nudge kind of behaviour? We gained an enormous amount of insight into the project. We wanted to make sure all of that wasn't lost when the project team left and went on to different things. So we did a couple of things, and I'll run through these quite quickly because we're getting short on time. But firstly, we engaged, familiarised and integrated a continuous improvement team right from the start. So we had people from the Dvsa involved in the project right from day one. And as the project evolved, we integrated them into the team. We aligned them to our human-centred, agile way of working. And we helped them to upskill in new areas of technology that they weren't familiar. And we helped raise their awareness of the government digital service standards and got them to start thinking about what they might need to do to get through their next assessment.
One of the way we've also had run this up was to use a kind of asset sharing board on Miro, so one of the tools we use to collaborate remotely. Because one of the challenge that they had to take forward was to actually design tests for multiple categories of vehicle. So bikes and lorries, buses, tanks. And so one of the way we did that was to make sure that we made their work easier by sharing all the assets and just giving them a kind of design library they could build upon. So you can see some of these artifacts in here. And the other element that this brought was to make sure that the developer knew exactly what was already developed, and so that they don't need to, start again from scratch.
Yeah. And we shared a lessons learned and supported the DVSA's multi-agency approach. So we've tried to play an active role in the service design community and actually share best practice with other agencies working alongside DVSA to help achieve their overall strategic vision. And we worked with their internal teams too. So we tried to kind of become an extension of their internal capabilities. We work with change management, we work with the staff enablement group, the communications team, user research team. And we wanted to help the DVSA share the kind of good news stories and keep the entire agency up to speed on the project's latest developments. So you can see in this example here, we're running a visual impairment workshop. And what we were doing is enabling the whole team to experience what a vehicle examiner with a visual impairment might experience when using the app for the first time. And we tried to look for opportunities to kind of be evangelists or flag wavers, if you like, for human-centered design and agile ways of working. And we try to do this at every opportunity. This is a lunch and learn all around design thinking. And I think the majority of people aren't even involved in any of the projects that we're working on, but just came along because they were curious. So what are our three top takeaways? Well, I think for me, and I kind of talk about this a lot really, but at the heart of successful digital transformation, it's all about people and relationships, not technology. In many ways, the key technical skills needed are more aligned to what we might consider the kind of soft skills. So it's skills like critical thinking and problem solving, creativity, communication, collaboration, trust. These are the skills that make us all human, and are the skills that I really believe empower teams to perform. So secondly then, I think done well, a human-centered mindset can be the fuel that add oomph throughout a project delivery. By starting with impact and looking at ways to maintain momentum, you can close that loop between the strategy at the beginning and the delivery. And I think you're much more likely to create a longer lasting organizational change. And finally, I think you've got to put yourself in the passenger seat and strap in, because transformation can be a really bumpy ride. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more, I'd recommend both of these books. They're quite quick and informative reads, and they've both got these people have both got a lot of connection with government digital services, but they'll give you a really good insight in how to get started with human-centered design and digital transformation for government. So that just leaves me to say thank you. If you'd like to learn more about digital transformation or just talk about human-centered design or product design, we'd love to hear from you. And all that remains for me and Olivier to say is, on behalf of DVSA, we wish you all a lifetime of safe driving. Thank you very much. Okay, so do we get any questions then, Olivier?
There's two questions. Yeah, there's a question from Yvette. So the first one, I'm going to read it. Did you have project managers for each team, or was this all coordinated by the delivery managers? So we had one delivery manager per team, but they were kind of joining into a single person. So they were constantly engaging with the service owner and the project owner, and really coming to, for example, coming to every stand-up for the two teams, and really trying to remove all the obstacles that were in front of us. So yeah, the two delivery managers did a very good job, but they were kind of overseeing each team, but really working as one man. There was another one. So a comment from Yvette, love the lunch and learn initiative, such valuable add-on. So referring to the impairment workshop, yeah. One from Nahel, I would like to have more information about Design Thinker program. So it's probably one for you, Paul.
Well, there's loads of information out there. The best place to start in many ways would be IDEO. IDEO have got a whole section around education. If you're interested in design thinking and understanding how design thinking works, that's a really good place to start. In terms of the workshop that we did, it was almost trying to make it a more practical application. So in terms of less about the process and more about the mindsets. So in order to overcome problems, what kind of mindset do you need to adopt? And we managed to, I think we did that, it was about 45 minutes, that workshop, Olivia, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty quick, fast-paced, and but on that as well, we for other clients, we've also run design boot camps, and these are also quite interesting because they're really hands-on and give you the opportunity to learn by doing rather than to learn about something. I think that's what this design thinking methodology is all about, is you learn through making, and it's a different way, it generates a different kind of knowledge as well. So yeah, I would recommend to learn about design thinking by doing it.
Yeah.
Well, so I think we are out of time there, but thank you so much, guys. That was a really good session. I think before we do close off, Paul, do you want to just share your screen?
Yes, the sharing screen.
We have got a number of events running as part of the festival, and we are hiring. So I would like to, we will let you know about these roles. We will be following up after the session with a recording of today's event and also any curation of any questions that might have come through. I think Paul's just trying to share his screen. There we go. So without being too bold, we are hiring. There's a number of roles that we've got across BGSS and Spark. So anyone that's interested in finding out more, do look at our website. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at many of the other events and enjoy the rest of the festival. Thanks very much for today, guys. It was a great session.